Welcome back to the Profits of IT, where the sharpest people in the MSP world share what's working, what's broken, and what should stop, what you should stop doing immediately. I'm Jim Punzenberger, and I built this podcast because MSP owners deserve straight talk, not just sales pitches. And speaking of that, things that actually work, if your pipeline depends on hoping a vendor throws you a lead, you're not in control of your business. ManagedProspectingSystem.com is a system I built after owning and selling my own MSP, because I've learned the hard way that the only pipeline you can trust is the one that you build yourself. This is 3 pillars: authority content that makes you the obvious expert, LinkedIn outreach that opens real conversations, and email campaigns built on relevance, done for you every week. ManagedProspectingSystem.com. Own your pipeline. Today's guest is somebody who's been in the MSP trenches for 7 years and has the credentials to prove it. In 2018, he was named the #1 sales rep worldwide for Datto, a billion-dollar company with hundreds of reps globally. He's now VP of Sales at Hook Security, a security awareness training and phishing simulation vendor built specifically for you, the MSP. He's visited all 6 Disney theme parks on the planet, and not to mention, his walk-up song is Hooked on a Feeling. He works at Hook Security, so I think that's a fitting song. Nick, welcome to Profits of IT. Feel free to say hi to the audience.
Yeah, hi Jim. Thanks for having me on here. It's a pleasure always engaging with these types of podcasts and talking about my favorite subject with it, which is the MSP space.
Well, it's one of mine also. So let's jump right into it, Nick, and talk about your truth bomb. Yours might be the most practical and valuable set of truth bombs that I've had on this show, because MSP owners can take these directly to their clients. Let's start with the one you said is the biggest misconception, is that phishing tests are catching people. If that's wrong, what are they actually for?
Yeah. So, phishing tests aren't necessarily, for catching the people that are clicking on the bad links. Yes, that's important, but in reality, the goal of a phishing simulation really shouldn't be who is clicking on the bad links, but it's to build muscle memory for psychological resilience. That's what we really want to accomplish. If your employees are afraid of the annual phishing test because, they're going to click on something that they shouldn't, that's not good muscle memory. Instead, you should be rewarding not only if they don't click the bad link, but if they report it. That's what MSP should really be focusing on, is, reporting when both the real phishing attacks come in as well as the annual phishing simulations come in. That's something that we're seeing a lot of our. We want all employees to essentially, instead of those employees acting as a weakest link, those employees should act as a security asset. Think of it for an organization, if all of your employees are actually doing their due diligence and reporting phishing links when they come in, that's really where proper training is going to come into play.
And now let's chat about your superpower, Nick. Yours explains exactly why you became the #1 sales rep at such a large company. You said your superpower is translating complex, high-stakes security risks into low-friction human conversations. You help leaders stop looking at all their staff as vulnerabilities and start seeing them as sensors. How does that translation ability play out in a sales conversation?
Yeah, so I'm not the smartest person in the room. No, I'm not the CTO of an organization or anything like that. At the end of the day, I'm a sales guy, so I need to take something super complex with all the bells and whistles, all the nice shiny features that the development team works really hard at creating, and those features are really nice and shiny, but taking them and regurgitating them down for the MSP to understand where they could sell it, as well as dumbing it down even further for the non-technical end user to understand what the product or service actually does. That's what I really specialize in is how do I take a best in breed technology and make it easy to understand that your average end user will say, oh, okay, this is what it actually does. Like back in my career when I was selling data backup and disaster recovery and business continuity solutions during my time at Datto, I had to boil it down to a point where how does my grandma understand it? Oh, it's like iCloud backup. It backs up my sensitive information on my phone. Yeah, it's more complex than that, but yeah, sure, grandma. Yeah, that's what it's going to do. With security awareness, it's no different. What are we doing at the end of the day? We're making it easier for the end users to understand what a good email looks like versus a bad email, and so their organization doesn't get compromised, or it lowers the likelihood of their organization getting compromised.
Hmm. Any tips on MSPs that would like to improve in this area?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're an MSP business owner, try explaining your product or service, your pitch, to your parents, to your wife, right? Someone who is outside of the technical field. See if they can understand what you're trying to accomplish, and that will make the pitch a lot easier for your end user when you go to approach them with that product or service.
That makes sense. So
My
Nick,
wife is a nurse, right? She doesn't understand anything technical, right? So whenever I try to sell something, before I sell it to MSPs, I try to sell my wife on the idea,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to have a non-technical person to run it by. And so let's talk about your $1 million learning moment. Yours is a story that every sales professional and MSP owner who has ever been uh, tempted by a larger paycheck needs to hear. You said that you chased the check size instead of the culture fit. Uh, what happened there, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so I specialize in working in the startup realm around vendors that want to go after the MSP space. I've been fortunate enough to have, a couple home runs with both Datto that had a good exit and Scout Cybersecurity, which was acquired by Barracuda Networks. But not every time when you're up to the plate, you're going to swing and hit a home run. Sometimes you strike out. And one organization, I won't mention them by name, but I joined them because, hey, they were offering me a heck of a lot of money and money's important, but it's not the number one most important thing. What I found was that I actually value the culture of an organization more than the total payday at the end. That organization that they joined, they were an overseas company and they were trying to get into the MSP space, trying to understand the American market, and there was just a lot of friction as opposed to what the U.S. and the North American market is expecting from a sales go-to-market motion versus what they were experiencing, overseas. So that's where I took a step back, and whenever I'm on the market or looking to potentially change my career path, I got to make sure that the cultural fit is there. And that's really one of the things that led me to my new employer, Hook Security, is, from day one, the CEO and I were on the same level, right? We want to target managed service providers. We want to make it easy for them to buy us. We want to make it affordable for them and profitable. And, having a cultural fit there is definitely very important to me. And that's something I would recommend both when you're hiring new employees or if you're looking to join a new organization.
That definitely makes sense. So we're mentioning, you just mentioned Hook Security again. What has you excited right now at Hook Security?
Yeah, so with Hook Security, it's real interesting, right? It's security awareness training and phishing simulation for MSPs and SMB clients. And a lot of it has to do with my previous employer, Cork, which was a cyber insurance, cyber warranty vendor for MSPs. And what we noticed with all these payouts and financial claims that we were doing at Cork, it wasn't necessarily a ransomware attack, where something malicious was getting installed on the server. A lot of the payouts were due to user level issues. They were falling victim to wire transfer fraud attacks and clicking on a link and sending money to the wrong place, or clicking on a link and their credentials were getting compromised, and the MSP would have to spend thousands of dollars in labor doing an incident response or remediation. And it wasn't necessarily a failure of the software that was in the organization. It was really more of a failure on the user. So I'm trying to be at the top of the spear now, right? making sure that users are educated to make sure that clicking those bad links that they statistically have been clicking on in the past. And the fact that Hook is really designed for MSPs, and that's their primary business focus, focusing on MSPs of all shapes and sizes, making it easy for them to buy without any long-term contract or large minimums. That was the cultural fit that I needed to join. They understand the MSP language for sure.
So anything you think that the MSPs should know about right now that's going on at Hook?
Well, with Hook, you're going to be seeing a lot more come down to the pipeline with us. One of the things that I like about our content that we create is that it's all US based content with a US production facility. So we utilize live actors, our own employees for this content that gets shipped out monthly. So it's always new, fresh content, nothing that's stale, nothing that's animated or slideshows or anything like that. And when it comes to the MSPs delivering this type of content to their client, they could do it annually, a 1 hour session once a year. But most of our MSPs are actually taking advantage of our micro learning sessions, which is just 2 to 3 minute trainings once a month for the users. That way, they're not having to sit down for a full hour, but they're staying up to date on all the latest types of attacks and trends. And security awareness training is always front of mind.
So Nick, if you pique somebody's attention and they'd like to learn more, what would the next steps be for them?
Yeah, if you want to chat about the MSP industry or what we're doing at Hook from a security awareness training standpoint, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Nick Wolf, very easy to find me on LinkedIn. Or you could also find us on our website, hooksecurity.co. And, happy to engage with any and all MSPs or MSSPs. I've been in the channel now for 15 years, so I've seen a lot of things. So whether you want to chat about something Hook related or just channel related, feel free to drop me a message.
Well, Nick, we'll include links in the show notes, so you can check the show notes to find Nick on LinkedIn. So, well, Nick, thank you for your willingness to share today.
Yeah, no problem, Jim. Thanks for having me on, and best of luck.
And until next time, I'm Jim Punzenberger, your host and founder of ManageProspectingSystem.com. Now would be a good time to check out ManageProspectingSystem.com. And don't forget to stay hydrated and caffeinated. Bye for now.